Good morning, everyone. It's good to see some new faces this morning. Beautiful weather. My name is Bret, for those that don't know me, and my Dharma name is Xianbei. So I knew I was scheduled for this talk today, and I was preparing for it, but I didn't realize until last Sunday that we were having a Dizang ceremony, and of course we thought it would be nice to talk about Dizang or Siddhigarbha Bodhisattva today a little bit. So instead of completely throwing out my original talk, I decided to do half my talk with my original topic, which was right view, and then the back half we'll talk about Dizang and the ceremony over here today. So, and of course, they really correlate very well because all things in Buddhism correlate. Everything's interrelated, right? So there's no problem there. So on right view, I found a book in the library downstairs, little book. It's called The Way to Inner Peace, Buddhism for Daily Living, a Practical Guide. And this is written by Kingsley Rajapakse. I'm sure I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, but Rajapakse, Kingsley. But I really liked it just because it's really practical, down-to-earth understanding. We can use Buddhism every day, in our daily lives, which we all try to do, but this gives some good examples of how we can do it, and then it has a little exercise in there that I'll talk about, and I'm glad to see some new people because I think this would be useful. So I want to just read at the beginning the way this book starts out. I really liked it. It says, no other story from the Buddha's life profoundly reveals the cardinal point of his teaching as the following story of the fox and the mange. And just so we are familiar, mange is an itchy skin disease caused by mites that canines can get. One day when they were in the forest, the attention of Buddha and his disciples was drawn to a fox that seemed restless. In silence, they watched the animal. The fox stood still for a moment, then it ran under the bush. A moment later, it ran out of the bush and stood still again. Then nervously it made a few circles and sat down. Not for long, though. With apparent agitation, it ran into a cave. Back again, it jumped up and then ran into a hollow of a large tree. For a while, it continued to move from one thing to another. Then it disappeared out of sight. At that point, the Buddha addressed his disciples thus. Monks, you saw that jackal. Standing it suffered, running it suffered, in the cave it suffered, and so did it in the bush. For its suffering it blamed the standing, the sitting, the running, the cave, the bush, the tree hollow, and so on. But the problem was not due to any of those. That jackal had mange. That was the root cause. Until mange is got rid of, the jackal will continue to suffer. The Buddha then went on to show that when it comes to the effort to avoid discomfort, the human predicament is the same as that of the fox. We focus on externals, hoping to eliminate discomfort and find lasting comfort. But none of that helps because the root cause of our problem is wrong views or wrong thinking. That is our mange, or you could say our ignorance. Until we change our views, we will continue to be unhappy like the fox, no matter what else we do. So I thought that was a pretty straightforward work on our views, on our ignorance. And so an example of that, the little exercise in this book I thought was pretty neat that this venerable monk used with especially his beginning students. And he had some examples in here. And the scenario is this woman, Alicia, had some back problems. And she finally went to the doctor and had a diagnosis, and she had a slip disc. So the the first part of the exercise is you write, it's called the statement of my dukkha. And for you beginners, if you're not familiar, the term dukkha is a Pali term, and I like to leave it untranslated because dukkha can mean many things. It's usually translated as suffering, but it could also mean unsatisfactoriness or stress or dis-ease. So we all have some form of dukkha in our life, and often when we attach to and cling to things of this world, we experience dukkha because everything's impermanent and we're holding on to something that's always changing, and it causes us to suffer. So we have to work on our views. So the statement of the dukkha from Alicia, this is a statement of her dukkha, and this is to do with the first thing is you write, how does it make you feel? So she discovered she has a slip disc, and she says, I feel worried and hopeless after the news of the medical diagnosis. And her view, or worldly view, is why me? But now we need to look at this in a different way. We need to look at this from wisdom point of view, from an ultimate point of view, or a transcendental view. And so after sitting and contemplating that for a time, she wrote this: dukkha is universal and has not exclusively chosen me. Dukkha appears in different forms to different persons, and so also to the same person at different times. Dukkha has to be faced right through life. It is inevitable because of the law of impermanence and my own past karma. I can think of many other situations which could have brought much greater dukkha upon myself. So I have to accept the physical dukkha of the slipped disc, but I need not overburden myself with mental dukkha, entertaining irrational views such as, why me? So you can see, she started off with why me, and then came up with the transcendental view, which is much more logical, an ultimate view. Another view she had, a worldly view, was I should have been more careful in the way I used my body in the past. If I did, this would not have happened. And we could see, I've said that for this body at times, but the transcendental view, the ultimate view, is this: things happen exactly the way they are supposed to. Any happening is determined by an unfathomable cause-effect linkage that goes back an endless time. So I cannot blame myself for what I did or didn't do up until now. Neither can I visit the past to change what has happened, and I could only do what I knew to do at each moment in my life. And she continues, however, I can take the most sensible action in the present moment to improve things, including a thorough discussion with the doctors. So this is a very logical view, not emotional. So to switch a little bit, so that was Alicia's work. And now we can go to Bertram. This is a relationship issue. Bertram does not like his cousin Burl. Burl is very irritating. So the statement of Bertram's dukkha is, I feel very angry and agitated after meeting cousin Burl today. So his worldly view was he shouldn't have visited us today. Or I'm going to skip that one. I'm going to go to the second one, the worldly view. He has annoying ways. As I said, he's annoying. But transcendental view, ultimate view. Each one of us 6 billion people on this planet has a unique makeup of right views, or wisdom, and our wrong views are ignorance, which makes each person unique in one's way. I am ignorant just as cousin Burl is, though maybe on some different things. That is the way things are. Also, my own karma placed me in a situation where he is my cousin. All of this tells me that I should show compassion to him instead of being averse and angry. So I like that one. And the next worldly view was he caused me to get angry. But the transcendental, the ultimate view is, it's not others or their behavior that caused me to be upset. but how I perceive them. I need to identify, as I am doing now, filling this form, with wrong views, ignorance in me that cause me to get upset, and with the help of Vipassana, gradually work to eradicate them. So I thought those examples were down-to-earth, everyday things that we can do for ourselves. Maybe I know a lot of us practitioners have done this a lot in our minds all the time, but this was something that was written out. And I know Maggie, like with Alicia's example with her body, Maggie's been fighting cancer for some time now, and I'm sure there's a lot of this mental dukkha continuously. And
Alicia and I are like that.
yeah, and so I'm sure she has to have this transcendental ultimate view.
Right, I have to.
You have to, and I'm sure that's not easy to have all the time.
Not at first.
Yeah.
It's becoming more habitual now.
That's great. That's great. So that was just that part on right view. And I'll shift gears a little bit now and talk about Dizang Bodhisattva, or Siddhigarbha is the Sanskrit, Siddhigarbha with a K-S, Siddhigarbha. I honestly didn't know very much about Siddhigarbha at all. I just knew of the Dizang Hall and considered the Bodhisattva of beings in hell. And why is that? So like I said, Siddhigarbha is the Sanskrit, Dizang is the Chinese, and in Japanese it's Jizo.
What do you call it in Sanskrit again?
In Sanskrit, Siddhigarbha. Siddhigarbha, yeah. You know, now you know it. Siddhigarbha is one of the four principal bodhisattvas. There's many, many, many bodhisattvas, but there's four of the major ones, all of which represent character or great qualities in their practice. Manjushri is one, and he represents wisdom. Avalokiteshvara, or better known here as Guanyin, the Guanyin Pavilion, is known for compassion. Hears the cries of the world. Guanyin. And then the third is Samantabhadra, which I know very little about. And that represents action and vow. And then the fourth is Siddhigarbha, which represents vow and dedication. So Siddhigarbha, the name can be translated as earth store. I think that's the most common earth store bodhisattva that I've seen, but also earth treasury, earth matrix, or earth womb. And Siddhigarbha is especially popular in the Far East and revered in East Asia. In the Japanese culture, it is also the guardian of children and the patron deity of deceased children, too. So, in China, there's 4 sacred mountains for these 4 bodhisattvas, these 4 main bodhisattvas. And it's Mount Jihua. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Jihua is the mountain where Siddhigarbha is said to reside. They call it Bodhimanda, is a place used as a seat where the essence of enlightenment is. So, Mount Jihua. Siddhigarbha is most often depicted as a monk, as you see. I don't know if you're familiar with the statue in there, but when we go in there, you can take a look at the statue. And before the Tang Dynasty, pre-Tang, it was still a classical, most of the classical bodhisattvas are in Indian royalty attire like the Guanyin, and that was true of Dizang, but later on, after the Tang Dynasty, was more depicted as a monk, and with a nimbus or a halo around the shaved head, and he carries a staff they call a kakara, and it has it has rings in it, so when it jingles, it makes some sound as the Bodhisattva is walking, and this is to alert small animals and insects of the approaching, so he doesn't trample on them. But also, in this case, for Dizang, also opens the gates of hell with the staff. And in his other hand, he holds a wish-fulfilling jewel called a Sintamani to light up the darkness. So they're chanting over there today the sutra where Siddhigarbha appears. And I have the only English copy in this facility today. There was more, but this apparently is the last one, so I gotta be sure to give this back to Venerable. Very interesting. It's very descriptive so in a nutshell, the sutra is fundamentally a teaching concerning karmic retribution. It very graphically describes the unfavorable conditions in hell that await those who perform unwholesome actions. And it's very descriptive. But it also, this sutra deals with filial piety, which is just a virtue and respect for not only our parents and elders, but our ancestors, and really takes it further, not just for our own family, but for all people, for a universal code of duty or responsibility for all living beings. So this sutra was said to have been spoken by the Buddha towards the end of his life to the beings of Trayastrimsa heaven as a mark of gratitude and remembrance for his mother, Lady Maya. And in Buddhism, there are many, many heavens, and I think it's 25 heavens, I believe, because there's 31 planes of existence. I think there's and there's hell realms. There's many, many hell realms, but we just can say hell realms to encompass them all. So, Siddhigarbha is most well known for a vow. This is the famous vow of Siddhigarbha, and I'll tell the whole story how this came about, but the vow is, until all the hells are empty, I vow not to become a Buddha. Only after all living beings are saved will I myself attain Bodhi. So this is obviously a very selfless vow, extremely selfless vow. This is a high mind state to let go of this self-cherishing mind, this attitude, and to only think of others. But of course, in helping others, you're helping yourself, helping all beings at the same time. So the famous story goes something like this. Many eons in the past, Siddhigarbha was, and this is a time when the Buddha of that era was known as Flower Samadhi Self-Mastery King. That was the Buddha name. Flower Samadhi Self-Mastery King. So Sacred Girl was of a Brahmin family, of a prominent family, and she herself, after many lifetimes, but built up good karma, for lack of a better, she was in a good position as a human. But unfortunately, her mother had some deviant views and often slandered the triple gems, or the Buddha and the teachings and the Sangha, the order of monks and nuns. She would often slander that, of that era. And the sacred girl was very concerned of this. And then when her mother died, she was very concerned, and she sold the family home and possessions and took that money to buy things for offerings for the different Buddhas, stupas, and statues at the different monasteries, and made all these offerings on behalf of her mother. And she really wanted to know where her mother was, and she prayed and prayed and wanted to know where her mother was. And she heard a voice from the Buddha that told her to go home and focus on his name, and he would show her where her mother was. So she did that for, I believe, a day and a night. She meditated. And upon doing so, her consciousness was transported to one of the hells. And she saw some, many beings suffering in the hells, and was really taken by that. And she was talking to the ghost king named Poisonless, asking about the hells. And I just remember it was interesting. The ghost king's said, there's only two ways to get here. It's from some superpowers that the Buddha gave her to get there, or your karma. And of course, it wasn't her karma. So she wasn't there for any karmic retribution. She was just there for some powers. And the ghost king said that, well, your mother was here, but she's not here anymore because of your offerings. This touched the Buddha and some of the devas, and she was reborn in the heavenly realm from her daughter's offerings, these offerings of the sacred girl. But the sacred girl was so touched by the suffering that she saw. That's when she made that great vow. Until all hells are empty, I vow not to become a Buddha. Only after all living beings are saved will I myself attain Bodhi. So this was a vow made many eons before, and it continues now. And I read 3 examples of different lifetimes where this same vow was made. I thought another one was really interesting. Same situation. This time, the Buddha of that age was called Pure Lotus Eyes, and again, Siddhigarbha was a girl of a prominent family named Bright Eyes, and again, mother. This time, it was more for her mother was very fond of seafood and ate a lot of fish, but also a lot of eggs, turtle eggs and fish eggs. So upon consuming eggs, a lot of beings were killed. And so she was reborn in hell for killing and also slandering the triple gem as well. And Bright Eyes, again, as Sacred Girl did, made offerings. And because of those offerings, the Buddha told Bright Eyes that her mother would be reborn into the very household that she was living in. And it happened to be the maidservant was pregnant, and she had a son. And he said that this child would speak when he felt hunger and cold, I think it was, for the first time. And so 3 days old, the baby spoke to Bright Eyes and said that she was in the hells, and because of your offerings I'm born. But But I will live a short life of 13 years, and then I will die and go to hell again. So it was a short reprieve. However, this is when Bright Eyes made the vow again for freeing all beings in hell before I become a Buddha or become Bodhi, have the Bodhi mind. And upon doing such a tremendous vow, the Buddha told her that after she would still only live 13 years, but not be reborn in hell, but reborn in a heavenly place, and from there would become also save many souls or many beings and attain Bodhi herself. So I thought that was interesting. Particularly, we learn in Buddhism, our karma is, we're going to pay that retribution, our karma retribution. We will be the heirs of our body, speech, and mind, of our actions, and certainly we will. Of course, what's interesting of these stories is merit and transfer of merit and offerings and the effects these may have. In the case of Siddhigarbha, these are tremendous effects. And so the selfless nature, this idea, of course, many of you have taken Bodhisattva vows, so this is the idea of eliminating this self-cherishing mind, this me, myself, and I. And again, as we discussed earlier, to see the ultimate view, the big picture, try to help all beings, and therefore you can only help yourself, if you will. There's very powerful stories of these, especially just to me in the West, the merit and the transfer of merit it's not something that was strong in my practice, but after reading this, I think it'll become more so. It'll be something new I could add to be a benefit to everyone, you know. So. I would just like to, in closing, read part of this to give you a feel for this book. This is Shakyamuni Buddha talking here. Men and women in the future may fail to do good deeds and only do evil, may not believe in cause and effect, may indulge in sexual misconduct and false speech, may use divisive and harsh speech, and may slander the great vehicle. Beings with karma like that should certainly fall into bad destinies, but if they encounter good and wise advisors who exhort them and lead them to quickly take refuge with earth store Bodhisattva, then those beings will just as quickly be released from their retributions in the three evil paths. If those beings are determined and respectful, if they behold, bow to, and praise the Bodhisattva, and if they make offerings of flowers, incense, clothing, jewels, food, and drink to him, they will enjoy supremely wonderful bliss in the heavens for millions of billions of eons. When their blessings in the heavens end and they are born as people, throughout hundreds of thousands of eons, they will have the potential to be national leaders able to remember all aspects of causes and effects from previous lives. O Samadhi Self-Mastery King, Earth Store Bodhisattva has such inconceivably great, awesome spiritual power that he uses expansively for the benefit of beings. All of you Bodhisattvas should remember this sutra and proclaim and spread it far and wide. That's my talk. Thank you.